And so it is. Cool. So, brain dump. Tell me what you know about keys. Make a list.
API issues a key that's required to pull data from it.
Cool. Yep, it's like a key that you use to start your car. You want to operate the car, gotta have the key. Cool. What else do we know about it?
You can hide them with envelope, maybe it stands for. I don't know.
Environment.
Environment.
You can hide them in the environment. What else?
You don't want to post them to GitHub.
Don't post them. Asterisks. Some of them we can't get away from, but
They're how APIs like recognize which user is looking up data from them.
yeah, it's kind of like a username and a password all in one.
Are you trying to share your screen, Kyle?
Oh, come on, man.
The invisible screen, Bryce.
What is it? A day that ends in Y?
Another one of those.
Are they always 17 letters? Characters? Numbers?
API keys?
Yes.
Oh, they can be any length. Yeah, it just, as long as the server can uniquely identify what it is, it could be cat. They often use like hashes and stuff that use particular algorithms that, like there's popular ways to do that, but nope, they don't have to be anything.
Is it a security thing?
Sort of. It's less a security thing and more of a control thing. So if I give you a key that's different than Lynn's key, I can turn off Lynn's key without interrupting your access.
So is the general consensus or the general design thought is if you have an API you're paying a bunch of money for, that it's going to have a much more complicated key?
Well, likely. Like,
Okay.
I would say like it's pretty rare that someone tries to guess keys. What's more likely is that you accidentally leak a key somewhere and someone steals it. And the like official term for it is quota theft, because you'll usually have like some kind of quota, and whether it's paid or unpaid. If it's a free API, you can only make 50 calls a day. If it's a paid API, you pay $10 for every million calls or something like that. And so if somebody has your key, they can eat up your quota. And if they're doing it maliciously, they can just set an infinite loop to make those calls over and over again. And that's how you get a $70,000 AWS bill. Like Peeves the Poltergeist. I'm reading my kids' Harry Potter right now, so.
Sounds like a fun Wednesday night.
Yeah.
I was looking through some random APIs on one of those, API consolidator things over the weekend. And I can't remember what it was, golf course data or something like that.
Okay.
And it was a pay for API and it was like $4,000 a month.
Yeah, could be. Like the more specialized ones, is like it's not the volume of data that drives that; it's the scarcity of the data. Yeah. And so, if nobody else has good golf course data, you get a corner on that. Especially if like you get exclusive agreements and shit with golf course owners. Well, you have a very valuable thing. Another one that tends to surprise people there isn't a good free API for is real-time stock information. As you might imagine, having like really up to the like millisecond pricing data on stuff is very valuable because it allows you to do programmatic trading, which also is like super dangerous. really, like, all automating something does is let you do something really fast, including bankrupt yourself. So,
I was actually listening to a podcast this morning about a company that's creating like a more open source API for stock trading.
Ooh.
yeah, you can find ones that'll give you like up to the like 5 minutes or so.
Yeah.
But the more precise those get, and those are like tiers of service too. I think you pay more money for a more precise API. But yeah, people like have been making a pretty penny off of that. So it doesn't surprise me if somebody's trying to open it up. Other things we know about keys.
You have to include them in every request you make.
Mm-hmm. Where do you put them?
Depends on the API.
Good answer. So what are some options?
In the header as a query param.
Could it be anywhere else?
In the body.
Yeah. Oh, you guys grow up so fast. Those are realistically, those are the 3 places it could be. It could be in a query param, it can be in the body, or it can be in a header. So include in request. So it can be a QP, body, or most commonly it's specifically an authorization header. Could technically be anything, but often not. Okay, so let's visualize this a little bit. Come on. Old man Coverly's favorite diagram. Clients and servers. Okay, so these 2 things make HTTP requests. All right, now we have some third-party API. Google Maps API, it's the Stripe API, it's whatever. Let me make these different colors. Two different ways these requests get made. They either get made like that, or they get made like that. So, generally speaking, if the key needs to be private, secret, can't leak it out, then your key has to be here. So you make a request to your server, which then makes the request to the API. API gives the response back to the server. Server gives the response back to the client. Coincidentally, this is proxying, that thing that I think Damon's teaching about a little bit later today. That's all it means. Your server is making a request on your behalf. And it's doing it because I can keep something secret on my server. I can't keep anything secret on a client. Once the code is on the client, it's running on user's computer. User can look at the code all they want. So I can't hide anything here. I can hide whatever I want on the server. So there's also some APIs that you make the request from the client. In that case, it kind of doesn't matter where you put the key. Because we're not keeping it secret. We can't. We can just throw it in a variable. That can go on GitHub. Why not? Now, where the reason that React and Vue and Ember all have like .env files that you would build in to your front end isn't because like we're keeping anything secret on the client. What we are doing is potentially using different keys in development and testing and production and staging. We can have different keys for all of those environments. That's why it's a .env file. So this entire shape, I might have one that's all localhost. I got a faked out version of this API. My client's running on localhost 8080. My server's running on localhost 3000. It's not a real app. It's all just running on my computer. Unless you're on the same network as me, you can't use it. But that's how you develop. You might have another one for testing. This exact same shape up in some like Circle CI server somewhere. And it's running your tests for you. It also, localhost 8080, localhost 3000, it's doing whatever, but it's getting that whole app running. Can't use it outside of Circle CI, but we can test that the logic works. And then we have a production set of keys that end up going to Heroku and Firebase and AWS and all these things. That's the actual real thing that the users use. I don't want to eat up my Google Maps quota with like hitting refresh on my local browser. So I can have different keys for those. That's why we would want to use env files on the front end. If the client's making the request, it's not a secret key. Questions about that? There's some APIs that use both.
So do some like free APIs give out keys even though you're not paying for the use of the API?
Absolutely. So what they'll do is say, here's a key, it's free. Please don't make more than 1,000 requests a month. And if you do, then any request that comes in that has your key gets throttled. So that way you can throttle somebody who's using the free resource too much without affecting anybody else. That's what prevents tragedy of the commons.
Are you throttled via the number of HTTP requests or the number of the amount of info you get back?
Could be either. So that could be like, you get to make 1,000 HTTP requests a month. Or it could be, you can do 1 gigabyte of transfer a month. Either of those, like, I could imagine a use case for. And like the logic behind this, simple. Like you could do it now. So I have a database table that's like, instead of a users table, I just have a keys table. And so I'll have whatever the key is, and then I'll have a counter for number of times it's been used this month. That's just if statements and updates and increments and stuff, right? Every time a request comes in, I just increment that thing up. And I go, cool, is that less than whatever my cutoff is? Or whatever that user's cutoff is? I could also store that on the same record. If this is less than this, then cool. There you go. We could also have like an access request table that like logs the keys. And so I can go, all right, I'm also gonna do a query in the last month. How many times has this key shown up? Oh, well, it's shown up 1,001 times. So is that less than this user's cutoff? Not. So I'm gonna give you a 400 response back or something like that. Actually, it's a 420 is the canonical response for that. Twitter started that. It is, the status code is 420 and the status message is enhance your comm. You're requesting too often.
So Kyle, we're using a free API
Mhm.
that has minimal documentation,
Mhm.
but they want you to use a key.
Okay.
They don't mention anything about like security or it seems kind of haphazard. It's like,
Mhm.
are they using it to try to restrict access, or are they using it to try to restrict data download, do you think? No idea.
Porque no los dos. I mean, here's the reality of it. I give you access to this free resource that I'm paying for. Like,
Yeah.
maybe not much, but like, I'll throw something up on Heroku. That's still $7 a month. Whatever. I'm a rich developer, so this is my contribution to the community. I give you the Digimon API for $7 a month. And then Lynn gets out of hand. Lynn starts making 1 billion requests to it a day, which like essentially renders it useless for anybody else. And so I go, all right, I'm imposing quotas on this now. You can only do 1,000 requests a day. I can handle that with how many users we have right now, and I'm not going to spend more than $7. And all right, cool. I can handle that. So that's why you would do that with a free resource.
Yeah, just it seems like they went to the trouble of making the API and having to use a key, but there's no documentation.
Well, it's like I was mentioning this yesterday. These things aren't made by some other super geniuses. They're made by people exactly like you. Some of them with less experience than you have.
Hey, Lynn, can you stop getting out of hand?
That Lynn.
Put a lid on it, Lynn.
You and your Digimon.
420 and chill out.
Very nice. Other questions about how keys work? Sometimes we'll have an API that has both. Stripe is an example of that. Stripe has a client key. It also has a server key. Server key is the thing that actually like charges money to people's credit cards and stuff. The client key actually runs on the client and does things like bot detection. It's like bots aren't allowed to fill out credit card forms on Stripe. And so it has like a script that checks that in real time, like as somebody's typing in. Because like, I'll give you an example. When you type in a credit card number, it's not precisely 1,000 milliseconds between each keystroke. It is if a bot does it. And then you go, okay, well, then I add a little bit of randomness to that. Anyway, they have a detection algorithm for like, if they think a bot is filling something out instead of a human. That runs on the client, not the server. So you need a key here that the user can see. And then the thing that actually makes the charge, there's that key. Part of the thing that keeps your quota from getting jacked from the client side is you can restrict these. Here's what that looks like, actually. Because I just did it last night. All right, so this is my Google Maps API key for the service that my networking tool has, where like it'll use Google Maps to find your house, and if you have like a floor plan with Google Maps, it can use that floor plan to try to like figure out where your access points are. So it's kind of cool. It didn't work, but still had to get the key for it. So what I did is, so like I'm logged into my account right now. You can't get to this screen from my key. And I can restrict who's allowed to use that key to anything on like the Ubiquity website, anything on this like local IP address, which it could technically be spoofed, but and then anything that doesn't have a subdomain on the Ubiquity website. So if anybody else tries to use my public key and they're not making the request from one of these URLs, too bad, so sad. Doesn't take up any of my quota. But I can also restrict that to a range of IP addresses. Only like an actual Android app is allowed to do it, etc. So let's talk about how we might do this without like the React build scripts or the Vue build scripts. Those make it really easy. You make a .env file, you do .env.development, .env.production, and like Webpack handles the rest of the magic. What if I wanted to be able to do that? For whatever reason, I don't want to put this on GitHub. And like, that's reasonable. Even for something that's not secret, still helps to restrict if somebody's actually fucking using your app. There's people who write scripts that just troll GitHub for published keys. Anytime somebody makes a commit, there's somebody who's got a bot that's just looking for a key that they can try to jack. Not that much of a problem with one of these keys if you're restricting it to a domain or something like that. So, all right, whatever, we don't want to tempt fate. How do we do that?
Don't you have to put it in a file and git ignore it or something?
Ooh, I like that. That'll work. Now what gets hard about that is like, that's easy to do on the back end. Here, I'll show you. All right, nothing up this sleeve, nothing up this sleeve. Yeah, you know the drill. So I'm going to make a new node project. I'm going to install Express and .env. I'm going to make an index.js file. I'm going to make a .env file. I'm going to go into the .env file and say top secret equals like that. We go into this index.js file, and I'm going to make a new Express app. I'm going to listen on port 4000. And whenever I get a GET request to the root, I'm going to respond with the secret. And the secret is process.env.topSecret. And right up top, I'm going to require in that .env package and run it. That's it. That's how we do this on the back end. If I run this server and go over to localhost 4000, hey, look, it read my secret. So what I can do now is make a gitignore file. Oops, not helps if I spell it right. And I can say, hey, gitignore, I'd like you to ignore .env. Now, if I open up .env, oops, if I open up .gitignore, all right, so it's saying I want to ignore .env files. That's in the env file. If I make this a Git repo, hey Git, what are we looking at here? Well, a node modules folder. Oops, don't want to commit that either. All right, Git, what are we looking at in this repo? Well, there's a gitignore file, a package JSON, which is like a gem file, package lock JSON, which is like a gem file lock, and this index.js. But that .env file is still there. I'll never tell. So I can commit all this. Oops. Come on, man. Good. Cool. I can push that up to GitHub. Won't have an env file. So that's how we can keep stuff secret on a server. Now, when you clone this down, it's not going to work for you unless you have that env file. So how do you get the env file? Some IT dweeb at your company sends you a secure email that you open, it has all the shit in, and then you make the file and throw it in. Or somebody slacks it to you, which is how it actually happens.
Or you just get your own key, right?
Yeah, so like that's the difference between of like, am I running this? Am I making my own like derivative work from this? Yeah, get your own key, dude. Or am I like setting up my own development environment? In which case, yeah, maybe I also get my own key. But if I need to do a production build, whatever else, then at some point I maybe need the production keys. So somebody can Slack that to you, or there's ways that we can have build servers that inject those in. It's like there's nobody at Google who has like the Google keys. That'd be a mighty dangerous thing to let loose. So those get locked up in a vault and only a robot can get to them. Oh, which reminds me, another like cool thing you can do with that hiding thing is you copy the env file into an env.example. And you do something like that. So now you can commit this file and push it up, and somebody goes, oh, cool, I need to have environment variables for this app to work. Or like I've done ones where you'll have like Google Maps API key. And then like I'll try to keep the format the same. so that I can recognize, oh, cool. I know which one that's supposed to look like. Because sometimes you get like a bunch of things back that all look like kind of could be keys. But one of them is an ID or something like that. Yeah, you can put that in an example file, and then in your like setup instructions, you go, all right, copy env.example to .env, and then replace the values with like your actual key values. That's pretty common.
Can you go back to your index.js?
Yeah. So if you've never seen an Express app before, like this is the structure of it. It's kind of like Rails, except everything's all in one file, or at least something this small is. This is like everything that would be in your initializers and stuff. We just get some variable out of the environment. This is a route. So a get request that matches the root directory. And then this function that we're passing in is the controller. And then this is the thing that happens when you Rails S. Okay, so that's how we do it on the back end. How would we do this on the front end though? If I want to, let's see, I'll make a new folder, hiding keys front end. All right, so I've got an index.html and an app.js. And a .env, well, I can't, so if you remember, I read this out of the environment before. The environment is this computer. Every client has their own environment. That's your computer and your computer and your computer. Also, client-side JavaScript can't read your environment because holy shit, that'd be terrifying. So how are React and Vue and stuff doing this? It's a tricky one. I'll give you a hint. You still need to use something like Node. So what goes on to the client for a web app? I go to loganswebsite.com. What do I get back? Oh, we should know this.
An HTTP response.
Yep. Containing what?
A stat and some HTML and
Yes.
headers and stuff.
Yeah, so we get that HTML back. So this is really an API server, but we also have somewhere over here file server. So this thing's going to make a request, go, hey, give me that HTML file. They're coming right up. And so the HTTP response has the HTML contents in it. And then as their browser's parsing that HTML file, it goes, oh, I need a script that's at this URL. And so it asks the file server, hey, can you give me this JavaScript file? And it gives you the contents of that file in the HTTP response. So we have this file server we're also doing this dance with. So the file's there. Those don't have to be the same as the ones that we wrote. I might have this HTML file and this JS file that I'm writing. And then I might do a thing called a build that transforms them in some way. And then those are the ones I put on the server. And so this build might also inject in some other stuff.
So is the build like kind of like a DOM, or I'm unclear on exactly what a build is.
It's way lower than that. It can be anything. So I wrote this JavaScript file, and then I press my build button, and it takes my JavaScript file and adds a line to the top of it, adds a line to the bottom of it. This does like regular programmer kind of stuff. It can replace every occurrence of something with something else. And this isn't even like JavaScript stuff or Ruby stuff. This is just file manipulation kinds of things. That's the build step. I can say, all right, I want you to go through this file and then just search and replace. Every time you see the word top secret key, replace it with whatever is in this .env file. And then take that resulting file and put it in this folder. And then that's the one you actually put on your file server. Fucking crazy, huh? Ask me some questions about that. It's a heavy one.
So with that, that would be like if we wanted to change whatever our development key was for something that was the production key.
That can also be like injecting a key in at all. I can go build development, and it does .env.development. And I go build production, and it swaps it out for whatever's in .env.production.
And so when you're writing, you would just have a variable that you then, in the build, it goes through and changes that variable out for whatever the key is or whatever.
Exactly. So yeah, that build, and it's just another script. It could also be in JavaScript. It's often not. It's often just in regular bash. It's just like you were typing the commands out on the terminal. But yeah, it's operating at like a meta level. It's like, look at the contents of this file, just like the characters, and then swap them out for this. You can do that with Ruby, you can do it with JavaScript, you can do it with Bash, doesn't matter.
Do some of the frameworks have that build like as a built-in feature that you just edit on your own?
Yeah, so React, Vue, Angular, all of them have like all those tools kind of, this build scripts sort of like scaffolded out for you. So when you create React or npm build on a create React app thing, that's what's happening there. It's also doing some other things, like taking the very beautiful, well-indented source code that you wrote and then mashing it up into the smallest code possible so that it's less characters to send over the network. Because at that point, no humans are looking at it. Who gives a shit? Like, that's where single letter variable names and all those kinds of things come in handy. But like at that point, it's computers talking to computers for the rest of the journey. So who cares? All right, I want to show you what this could look like. I'm thinking of like the smallest build script that I can. Should give you an idea of how this might work. All right, so I've got this app.js and this index.html. Actually, shoot, let's even take the app.js out. All I've got is this index.html. I'm going to steal the Sneed boilerplate from yesterday. All right, so I have this HTML file, and the way that you do a Google Maps integration, just tab one, hold up. So when we pull in Google Maps, the key actually goes in the URL, like this. So you're including a script that has your API key. And so we need to swap that out with my actual API key, which is this right here. So I want your API key to look like that whenever I actually deploy this thing. Okay. So I could write a little script called build. I can make it executable. Hey, look, changes colors. And then in the build script, I can write, say that this is a shell script. All right, what would I do? Well, I would read in the HTML file. So do that with cat. And then I want to take the output of that, and I want to use a command line tool called sed. It's a stream editor. It takes a look at lines of text and allows you to do search and replace. It's just search and replace. So I'm going to sed for your API key here, and I want to replace it with the actual API key. So maybe I'll say API key equals cat .env. So I was going to read that env file into this variable, and then this thing is going to use the variable to swap those out, and then we're going to write that. We're going to write that into a file called dist.index.html. Not sure if that'll actually work. It might. We'll see. Like that. So I'm going to make this dist folder. And I'm going to say, cool, I wrote my index.html file. Build it, please. Shoot. Try to do set off the dome. Let's see. Set example. Cool. That's how it works. All right, let's try that. Terminated S command. It terminated it. Oh. It's the final flag. All right. Cool. So now I should have in this dist folder an index.html. If I look at it, I didn't have anything in that actual folder, but all right, it made the file for me. Now, if I make an env file and I put my API key in, see if that works. All right. Build. Oops. Build. Shoot, still not there.
I think you put in the build file your API key here, and it's just your API key in the HTML.
So what this is supposed to do is take the result of this. I guess I can echo API key. Let's see if it's even reading it correctly. And then this should do the search and replace and swap it out for, oh, probably that. Also, I need to get rid of whatever it was first. So I can rm this index.html. All right, set up. All right, so it read my API key. That's good. Your API key. Oh, yeah, it's your API. I see what you're saying now. Yep. All right, let's try that again. Cool. Victory! Look at it. So now I can do two things. I can initialize this as a repo. I can put that .env file in a gitignore, and I can put that dist folder in the gitignore too. And so, all right, what am I committing? Well, I'm committing the build script and the index.html file. And so when I commit all of those, approve it. Go over to GitHub. get remote ed origin key. I push up this repo. My Google Maps key, nowhere to be found. Just says your API key right there. My build script doesn't have it. My getignore doesn't have it. There's no evidence of that key. But you can clone down this repo, and if you have a key in your .env file, you can run .build, and it'll swap that out and throw it in your file. Pretty cool. What questions have you? All in all, I wouldn't lose too much sleep over like publishing a Google Maps API key to GitHub. That's not that big a deal. You should restrict it to like your local host and that kind of stuff, but otherwise probably not that big a deal. Your other API keys, stuff that the client doesn't make, those ones, I want to make sure we're doing from our server, and we'll make sure that we're ignoring them. Those we want to like keep super special care of. Especially if you do anything with AWS, those keys are gold, man. And like, you wouldn't be the first student to get a $80,000 bill from AWS. They're pretty cool about like getting that kind of thing and like, you know, working it out with you. Not as in like forgiving the charges, not as in like setting up a payment plan. But how about don't tempt fate on that one? The client-side keys, doesn't matter. But if you did want to hide them, set up multiple environments, that's how you do it. Cool. Be well.
Thanks.
Cheers.